Hello and welcome to another episode of Meet the Leader, brought to you by the Uongozi Institute. I am your host, Gwamaka Kifukwe. For tonight's program, we traveled to Addis Ababa to the African Union Commission, where we spoke with their chair, Her Excellency Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. She's the first woman to hold this position, including in the previous organization, the OAU. Your Excellency, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So I just want to start off with recapping that in 2012, you were elected to the chairperson of the African Union. And what was your vision for Africa and where the AU can take it?
Well, after my election, or even before, as you know, I had been foreign minister, so I have been very much involved in the continental issues. And even when the AU was launched, my vision obviously is the same as the vision that the continent has for itself. And that is to have a prosperous continent that is integrated and peaceful, and that takes its rightful place in the world. But my view is that we need to do a number of things to be able to get there. And one, when we think about prosperity, I think it's important to say when you want prosperity, you invest. So where do we invest? And for me, the greatest investment that we have to do is in investing in our most precious resource. And our most precious resource is our people. And so investment in our people, both in terms of health, but more importantly in terms of skills. Our young people, our women, we must make sure that they are skilled, not only generally, but with also a big emphasis on science, technology, research, innovation, and to develop all the skills that we need, high-level skills, engineers, but also middle-level and lower-level skills, vocational training, services, training in areas of services. And the second thing that I thought was very important is agriculture. Because if we invest in our people, it means they have to eat. And a continent that can't feed itself cannot really be prosperous, peaceful. And we are lucky in the sense that we have all it takes. We have the land. We are told that 60% of unused arable land in the world is in Africa. We have plenty of water. We have plenty of sunshine. We have plenty of people, human resources. And therefore, we can develop agriculture to big business, to get our people who are working in agriculture not to be subsistence farmers, but to be real farmers. Also develop agribusinesses and do agro-processing. And so this is an area that can also contribute to our industrialization as we add value to what we produce in agriculture. And the third area that I thought is also very important is infrastructure. Because if we hope to be integrated, if we hope to industrialize, we hope to trade amongst ourselves and the world, we need infrastructure. We need infrastructure in terms of transport, in all the modes of transport, air, rail, road, sea. We need infrastructure in energy, because without energy, we can't develop industry. Our people cannot really study, cannot reach, and we can't say we're a modern continent if we don't have energy. So I think energy is one of the areas where we have to develop adequate infrastructure. We also have to develop infrastructure in ICT, broadband. Yes, we have undersea cables, but now we need to make sure that there are terrestrial cables that connect all of us. Water infrastructure, obviously, so, and social infrastructure. But for industrialization, energy, water, and of course people who are skilled will figure out what to do. And we also need to invest in value addition and beneficiation. You know, our continent, if we look back 50 years, a lot of our countries were either on par or even a bit above what we know now as Asian tigers. And some of them have very little, if any, mineral and natural resources. But they invested in their people, they invested in world-class infrastructure. But we have an added advantage that we have almost every mineral you can think of is found in Africa. Even the rare minerals are found here. Oil, gas, every year new countries are discovering that they have oil or gas, and many others. So if we were to add value to them, beneficiate them, one, we would stop exporting jobs that we export with raw materials. And the jobs we export are the high-level jobs. So we retain the low-level jobs of digging the gold, but we export the gold with the high-level jobs of adding value and beneficiation. So we will create many jobs for young people, and we have a growing population, a young population that needs jobs. And of course, if they are skilled, they will also be entrepreneurs, they'll be innovators, they'll also be creating jobs. But the other area is that we are exporting revenue as well. Because if you send cotton from the field out, those who spin it, those who make fabric out of it, those who make suits out of it, get much more revenue than we get. And the same goes for everything, whether it's timber or minerals or oil or gas. So it means the industries, downstream industries that we would be creating, we don't create because we're sending everything raw. So I think that's a major area. But that would also mean we are industrializing, which is very needed, because it won't sustain us to just trade in raw materials. And so with industrialization, value addition and beneficiation, and world-class infrastructure, skilled human beings, it means trade will also increase within the continent and trade with the rest of the world. We will also have people who will have income, and they will also have disposable income to buy our products. And I think all this can be accelerated if we ensure that women and youth are skilled, not to exclude men, because I've had this question, people saying, well, why are you always emphasizing youth and women? What about us men? We're relying on men. We've been relying on them since time immemorial. We're just saying we must add more talent and more resources to what we have already relied on, and that's youth and women. So they'll be joining the men, and then the continent can actually reach its full potential, because if you ensure that young people are productive, ensure women are empowered, they are emancipated, they participate in every area of human endeavor, you can be assured that the families will be looked after, communities will be looked after. But it would mean also most individuals on the continent are reaching their full development potential. And the other areas that I think we need to pay attention to, of course, is issues of peace and stability, security. And I think that the continent has got an architect, the peace and security architecture that is in place, and a lot is happening. And so that is important, because we can't build roads and rail in the middle of war. But equally, if you don't build those roads and rail, after some time you will have war. Because if people are starving, people are uneducated, people don't feel they are participating in the economy, they will rise. So the two have to be attended to equally. And of course, the continent has taken a decision that they want to silence the guns by 2020. So we have to accelerate all our efforts so that we can meet that deadline. And the last thing that I think we need to do very well in developing our economies, we must not lose sight of both the green economy, but more importantly, what is now popularly known as the blue economy. Because we have a huge continent where you can fit almost lots of the big countries. You can fit the United States into Africa. You can fit China, you can fit India, you can fit Western Europe. You can probably fit Mexico and still have space for Japan. It's a huge continent. But our oceanic spaces are even more than 3 times more than our land mass. And of course, the continent is surrounded by 2 oceans, 2 seas. And so there are lots of resources in those oceanic spaces. And so we need to develop that blue economy. Not only the resources out of the ocean, but the ocean has got maritime highways. But we don't have any transport that's running on those highways. It's other people's transport. We take a lot out, we bring a lot in, but we use other people's vessels. So the jobs on those vessels are lost to us. The income on insurance, on all the things that are attended to that, the food is lost to us because this is not ours. So the owners of the vessels source all these things in their own space. So that's my vision. It's not something that can be achieved in the short term, but we have to start in the short term and continue until we can achieve it. So I think we also need to ensure, as we look at peace and security, that we manage diversity properly. that nobody feels marginalized. We are inclusive in everything we do. People participate. When we say we have democracy, people must feel that they were participating in that democracy. When we're saying our economies are growing, they must feel that they are included. And so we need to narrow instead of widening the gap of inequalities. But there are certain things that are sure to narrow those inequalities, and that's education and skills, and that's areas like agriculture and so on. So that is my view. But my view is also that we should take advantage of technology. There is new technology. We've seen how our people have embraced technology. Even in the deepest rural areas, you find cell phones. They've not said, oh, because we don't have landlines, we can't use the latest technology. They've gone for the latest technology. And I think we have to also go for technology. I talked about skills. If we really want to have massive production of skilled people, we need to also use technology, because if we rely on the physical space that exists within our institutions, we will not get far, considering the number of young people that need those skills. So I think we need to also use technology to expand our capacity by using latest technology, so we can have part of the university or part of an institution, and not just the physical part. I think we also need to go for world-class infrastructure. When we talk about movement of people and goods, when we talk about rail, I think we should go for high-speed rail so that people can move within our continent, business people, goods. So I think we should, even in energy, we should bring all the different mix of energy, solar, wind, hydro, even biomass we can use. It's technology that is available. And so I think if we use latest technology, we can leapfrog some of the stages of development that other regions have had to go through.
I want to come back on a point you had mentioned about having worked at the national leadership in the ministries in South Africa, particularly at a time where South Africa played a very important role in the reconciliation of SADC, of the formation of the AU. In your view, what role or what are the leadership challenges that come along with trying to align, these kind of different goals? I mean, we have the African vision, but sometimes you do have, national visions that might compete, or regional agendas that might compete. So how do you reconcile these and align them so that Africa is moving as one, it has been a bit of a challenge?
Yes, it has been, and I think it will continue to be. But what we have done with our framework that we have developed, and we call Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, we did three main things. We consulted citizens in their different walks of life and asked them to send us their views, or we met with them and got their views. So we have a pretty good idea of what people in different sectors want. We then looked at all the national plans and tried to bring what is common in those national plans into our Agenda 2063. We also had meetings with the RECs and looked at their plans as well, those who have long-term plans. and made sure that Agenda 2063 is aligned with what the people want in their various sectors, with what governments are planning to do, and with what regs are also doing. So that we have then a common agenda as Africans, as the continent, whether it's at national or at regional or at continental. But what we are saying is we also want to have 10-year timelines to say in 10 years this is where we should be, in 20 years that's where we should be. But we then leave it to the countries to decide the policy mix that they think will work for them to get those results. Because our countries are at different levels of development, different resources, so they must decide what will work for them. But we're all working towards a particular outcome. And we did that precisely because we have seen how sometimes there's a continental policy, but when you look at the REC and you look at the national, their plans are very different. So we hope that this will mitigate that. Maybe not solve it completely, but we think it will go a long way. We also have decided that we must have some flagship projects coming out of this Agenda 2063. And those flagship projects should almost be projects that will affect every country. For instance, besides looking at e-universities and e-education, we're also seriously looking at connecting all our capitals and our commercial centers through high-speed rail. And we think that should be a flagship project for the continent in the coming decades. And that will be not only a flagship project, but it will be an integrative project. It will also be a project that will contribute a lot towards industrialization, because we would want to have the research and development centers on the continent. We'd want to have training centers on the continent. So maybe in the first phase, we could import the components that make that high-speed train. But in the medium term to long term, we would like to see those components manufactured in different countries, just like they do with the Airbus. Because the Airbus is assembled in Toulouse in France, but it's manufactured by different countries. So we would like to look at that, and therefore that will also mean that there are projects that are completely continental like that. Yes, they will be implemented at the national, but they are coordinated and they are continental projects. And we can look at highways in the same way. And we are already discussing with partners on this, because we also don't want this Agenda 2063 to be just a document that sits there and is quoted from time to time. We want it to be a living document that you can see this is what is implemented, and this is where Africa is going at a continental level, whilst member states also work to implement aspects in their own sovereign space.
Sure. And we're running short of time, but it would be really remiss of me to not point out that your election to the head of the AU was a milestone for women leadership across Africa as the first woman chairperson of the AU. And you've put women and youth very high on the agenda throughout your leadership. What message do you have, particularly to the youth, on the new challenges and the transformation of Africa that you see that will be coming in the next, in the next few years, but also in the coming decades, as Agenda 2063 hopefully it comes to fruition?
Yes. Well, I think all I can say to youth is that they are actually going to be the people that drive Agenda 2063. And therefore, each one of them should ensure that they are ready to play that part in whichever area they are in. They should be able to be called upon to be skilled in various areas. They should look at being entrepreneurs. They should be innovators. They should be taking us to the space, to a space station. They should be, I think our youth actually can achieve a lot more than any other youth have achieved on the continent. But also there is so much potential on the continent that our youth can be involved in such a broad areas of development, broad areas of the economy. So, and our youth are as good as anybody. And I think they have to have that attitude that they are amongst the best and they can achieve whatever. The sky is the limit and they must go for it.
That's a very powerful message, and we can end on that note. Thank you very much for making the time to visit us on our humble program, and we'd love to have you back on the show.
Anytime, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
And I'm very happy to be interviewed by a young person.